Hey folks, welcome back to Job Africa. This is Chris coming to you live from Central Pennsylvania. And today a topic that many people have been asking about, and I think a lot of people outside of West Africa are not all that familiar with, and that's what's happening in Nigeria. What is happening in Nigeria? I mean, if you follow the news reports, it seems like total chaos, thousands of people protesting, some dude up on top of some sort of transmission tower filming videos, people climbing over buildings, utter chaos. It has something to do with the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, the SARS. No, not the Sudden Acute Respiratory Syndrome, that acronym we're familiar with from a few years ago, but SARS, the Special Anti-Robbery Squad. And what I've done today is a colleague of mine who is from Nigeria, is a national security analyst and specialist in that field, and that is Ovigwe Eguegu, is back with us once again. He's last on the channel about 4 months ago, and we're looking for a good topic to bring him back, and this seems like an apropos moment. He is in line waiting for petrol in his car, so he's been very gracious to join us from a car. I'm going to put him on the screen now. Ovigwe, how are you today? There he is.
Yeah, very fine. And you?
Well, I'm older, and the beard is longer.
That's great. Yeah, it's good to be back. I remember when I came, the channel was still very young, and then I looked at the numbers and I'm like, oh boy, that's a huge progress in such a short time.
Oh
Kudos
yeah,
to you,
I
man.
think
Kudos.
thanks a lot. I think when you were on the channel, we had less than 2,000 subscribers back then. It might have been like 1,000 or 1,500.
Less than that, I think it was about 300. No jokes.
Oh my
I
goodness.
Yeah, it was about 300 or two. I could remember very clearly it was three digits, just three digits.
Well,
Yeah.
I will confess up front. I have to admit that all the growth has been entirely because your appearance on the channel. They heard you were on the channel, and they've just been streaming in ever since.
Thank you so much. and consistent posts from YouTube, because you could see, you've been doing this, that consistency, it adds up at the end of the day. It does add up.
No, it's pretty cool. And a lot of people seem to lose sight, and fair enough, they lose sight of the fact that I cover the entire continent, because I've had so much heavy coverage on South Africa the last month or so because of all these events related to farm murders and the political nonsense going on. So it's understandable why people, they haven't seen many prepared videos from me, because also during this time I had that trip to Wyoming, and I was gone for about 10 days because of that, and so I wasn't doing live streams, and then were prepared videos. And then the other thing is I came back and I was working at the War College for 3 weeks, so I didn't have time to do many prepared videos. So a lot of people seem to think that my channel is just a South Africa channel, but it's not. We cover all of Africa. And speaking of which, what the hell is going on in Nigeria, my friend? Tell us what's going on there. Give us a little background. What's this SARS organization? And as I understand it, before you answer, originally because of the heavy crime and brazen robberies, they created this special squad. But over time, at least in the public, it's gotten this reputation for being a bit lawless and out of control and abusive. How accurate is all that, and what is going on?
Yeah, so first of all, I've actually succeeded in getting for, which I'm really happy and thankful for, because I need to be off around town tomorrow, and I couldn't be much happier to have for to do that, because I've been a pain traveling by public transport. Anyway, so with SARS came as a response to increase in armed robberies and I would say internet fraud, right? So in the past 15 years, or let me say about 10, 15 years, Nigeria has gotten particularly notorious for being a hub of internet fraudsters, and con artists and so on and so forth. Those Nigerian princes.
I'm going to dispute that. I personally know several Nigerian princes who have hooked me up with oil wealth in the Niger Delta, and because of that, you see that I live in this sumptuous palace here. Oh, wait. So it's not quite a sumptuous palace.
Yeah. So what the government did was put together a special unit, right, that can handle. Primarily, initially, it was from armed robbery, right? Mm-hmm. So, but because they tend to always, the criminality, diffuses between armed robbery. Because I mean, if you can steal someone's money, with a computer, you can as well still do it, with a gun, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, so later they started including internet fraud into not in investigation now, but what they do was stop and search and look at people with cars that they don't seem that they can afford, right? Just like you do that for armed robberies, they started noticing that certain people who can afford, who are owning cars or properties that they can afford, and they started working together with other institutions like the EFCC, that's the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, and so on and so forth. But about 2012, 2013, about 2013 to particular, things started getting out of hand, right? they became very, very heavy-handed. So what you would find is a case where they could stop you, anybody, just anybody, and ask you, open your, what do you have in your car? They'll set your car, they see your laptop, they'll tell you, open the laptop, and they want to see what's inside the laptop. They want to see what's inside your phone, and it was going on and on, because then I think for many Nigerian youths, the idea that phone constitutes private property, didn't really make sense. So they didn't understand the constitutionality of rejecting or, a police officer's request to actually hand over your phone and then looking at, your bank statement and all of that. But it got so hard that I think the government started getting complaints from the public. The police started getting complaints from the public, but they didn't do anything until about 2015, where there was one viral, news about how SARS killed a man. I think it was in Lagos then. And then the government now said they were going to reform SARS. Mm-hmm. So what they and that was 2015. So in 2015, they promised to reform SARS, and they didn't do it. They didn't do anything particular other than compel them to have SARS written on their uniform, like practices like always introducing themselves and all of that. In 2016, they promised again, after no change in culture, in policing culture, they promised again that they're going to see, reform SARS. No, they promised to end SARS. So what we're seeing end SARS, and this is not the first time. Mm-hmm. Please, your viewers have to understand that Nigeria has been trying to end SARS since 2015. So there have been 2 occasions where they promised to end SARS. There have been 2 occasions where they promised to reform SARS, even before 2020. Right?
I think that's an important thing to point out here. Is number one is that because I think a lot of people outside Nigeria were unaware of what was going on, and the first they heard about this was actually after 12
in 2020.
Well, no, but after 12 people were killed, and actually that wasn't even that had been going on for 2 weeks before that happened. So this has been building for a very long time in Nigeria.
For a very long time. So even in 2017, there was a panel put together to investigate how to do like a full, reformation process of how the SARS policing would be done. They did not submit their report until 2018. That was presented to the government. Nothing. In fact, the only thing the government now did was to now change the name from SARS to FSARS. FSARS now means Federal Special Anti-Robbery Squad. I mean, it's like, and even when we are saying end SARS in 2020, after all of the gruesome and heinous crimes, if you see the video that sparked the current protests, happened in my home state, in Delta State, in the south of Nigeria.
Wait. That's where my oil is at, that the prince told me.
So in Delta State, this young fellow driving his car, going back to doing his business, he was stopped, and then the South official tells him, come out of the car, open your phone. And please understand, by the time they are saying stop, come down from the car, they are already agitated. They are already cracking their guns at you. Really, the thing, they have a war zone mentality.
Yes,
and that's why they are so trigger happy. So the moment the boy refused to actually open his phone, like why should I open my phone? Because in 2018, the IG of police, as Inspector General of Police, actually came out to say that police officers do not have the right under law to compel people to open their phone without a warrant.
Right, and not just on probable cause. I mean, and they have
exactly. So, but they still went ahead doing that. The police officers on the street, seems as if there's a disconnect between policing on the street and what comes out from the mouth of the IG of police or the others. It just doesn't work. Yeah. There's almost as if like an independent, unaccountable, unit, and that's what we've been seeing for many years. So this young man refused to actually hand over, open his phone, and they just gave him 4 bullets, and he shot on the spot. There is nowhere in the world that you can justify such an action where even if it was, they didn't even say. Even in the US, in the worst case of in the US, you hear them say maybe they thought he was reaching for a weapon. That's not even the defense they are pleading here. It's the fact that he refused to open his phone.
Well, hang on a second there. So
they're not saying the suspect that he was holding a weapon. They're not saying the suspect that he was going to attack them. They're not saying he looked like he was aggressive. No. All they are saying is he refused to open his phone. I mean, that's ridiculous.
And for that, they gave him 4 bullets.
4 bullets on the spot,
Okay.
and he died.
Well, let me clarify for folks, because that's a Nigerian euphemism. English is not English around the world. That's a Nigerian euphemism for they shot him 4 times.
Yeah.
Okay, so just for my viewing audience, because around the world, what that means is not to laugh at the fate of that gentleman, but they shot him 4 times for refusing to open up his phone.
And it's so sad because, and he is just one of many, many people that have been, and they are so exploitative. What my younger brother stays in Lagos, right?
Yes.
He's a videographer, and that means he always has to carry his laptop with him to edit videos, to do stuff for his clients. Sometime last year, he was stopped. He was told to open his laptop, and he did. They checked everything. They couldn't find anything other than videos of ceremonies after ceremonies after ceremonies. And they saved his friend that he was carrying then actually received an alert from someone, right, for legitimate business transaction, because that guy works in a club and he gets payments to buy like those expensive bottles of wine and all of that. And that was the transaction he received. They saw that, compelled them to go to the ATM and then to pay them money, right? For what? And because they can pin any accusation against you. It has happened time and time again. Even with the NSAS protest, you would find so many Nigerian celebrities have come up with stories they've heard of or things that have happened to them, directly, where you have SARS officials, arrest you because they cannot find anything incriminating. Then they start making stories or start threatening you. There were cases of people who were who actually arrested, kept in police station, right, beyond the 24 hours of which they should have naturally be charged according to law,
right,
and then telling you to call your family to provide some certain amount of money before they can release you, or they will photograph you with guns and accuse you of armed robbery, because after all, they're Special Anti-Robbery Squad. Nobody's going to doubt that.
Nobody's going to question when they claim that you did that.
Exactly. So you find families providing money, millions upon millions of naira, just to free their relatives. I mean, it's ridiculous.
So look, I think there's a very important point here. Well, 2 things. I've always been leery of special squads and special creations. I mean, if law enforcement can't do its job, I mean, with the exception of special weapons and tactics, that's understandable. SWAT capabilities for law enforcement to deal with a heavy firepower situation, that's understandable. But these special, unaccountable things, South Africa had something called the Scorpions a couple of decades ago that was created, and I was leery of the creation of the Scorpions because they were an extra legal body in my mind, because they had the power to issue warrants, to arrest people, to investigate them, and then they tried them as well. And I'm like, this is a recipe for disaster. You can't trust people to do this. But I was wrong. The Scorpions under Leonard McCarthy were above board, and they did their job well. But they were so good at their job that when they started discovering ANC politicians in corruption, they started going after them. And then, of course, that's when they couldn't exist anymore. So they replaced the Scorpions with something else called the Hawks. But I do have to bring out one thing here to draw a parallel. So I just to make sure this is straight. Okay, so in Nigeria, the police abusing people is clearly a case of systemic racism, right? That's why their police are shooting people, because of systemic racism, right?
Well, you can't really say systemic racism, because
of course you can. Of
black.
course you can. Of course you can. I'm just making a sarcastic, cheeky point.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. No, it's just to make that point. It's just we see that Julius Malema is in court in South Africa yesterday for assaulting a police officer 2 years ago at a funeral, and he's on video. He's caught shoving and pushing. The police officer does nothing to him. The police officer tries to walk away. He comes and shoves him behind. So he's charged with assault. And his response today after being out of court is that we won't tolerate these apartheid police because the police officer he assaulted was white. Just utter nonsense. But in Nigeria, so these 12 people were shot in these demonstrations. Is that true? Is that an accurate number? Was it more, or was it misreported?
Now, I'm sure you're referring to to the shooting in Lekki Toge, that's in Lagos State.
Yes.
Yeah. So one of the number is still disputed. The army is saying there were no fatalities. Amnesty International has come out to say they have no figures, and 12. Some people are putting that 15, some are saying 12. But at the end of the day, we have to understand that even if it's just one person that was killed by an army that was tasked to defend and protect Nigeria and Nigerians, that in and of itself is a huge disgrace and unacceptable. Because what the Nigerian government has done is to not look at the nuance difference among people on the street. Because what you would find prior to October 20th, you would find three types of Nigerians protesting on three types of agitation on the street. They were the legitimate, I would say, more led by the educated urban population protesters, which really started the NSAS movement, coordinating themselves online, having so much resources and, displaying so much competency in terms of managing the protest and emphasizing that the protests have to be peaceful. Online, they were doing that. On the streets, they were maintaining that peacefulness of the protest. Even in that very Lekki toll gate where the shooting happened, after protests, after they've gathered and they are dispersing, they actually wait. Some people wait behind to clean up after the crowd, because that was how organized they are. And then there was a second group of just about anybody who had like grievances with the police or with just general discontent with government and governance. Those were the ones you would find going about, destroying government property, burning police stations, burning courts, attacking, police officers. That was a separate group. And then there was a third group. The third group were people who were, I would say, criminals who were capitalizing on the chaos and the unrest in the country to perpetrate their crimes. Those are the ones that were looting shops in Lagos, looting shops here, in some parts of Abuja, destroying properties as well, like the second, like the second group. But our government failed to see the nuances and then conflated all three to say all of these are from the same group of protesters, and went to where they gathered the most, which is Lekki. Those in Lekki have been very, very responsible people in their conduct. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are so many videos and pictures of them just dancing and singing, and at the end of the day, they just clean up after themselves. I don't think anybody who has the decency to clean up after a protest would actually go and loot someone else's shop or destroy government property when they haven't destroyed anything, despite the fact that there were cameras worth millions of naira in front of them and laser cameras and so on and so forth. So for the government to do what it did as a way to squash the protest, leaving the second and the third group and focusing on the first group, shows the fact that the government does not even care as much about ending crime. It just wants to end the discontent that is being expressed on the streets of Nigeria.
Now, it's interesting, and we'll get to the media in just a second there, talk about what the role of the media is in Nigeria and how it's playing this. But a similar situation took place in South Africa recently when there was an arraignment for the two suspects who, in a domestic terrorist activity that murdered this young farm manager, stabbed him multiple times, beat him profusely, hung him from a post, and then left the knife that they stabbed him with in the ground as a warning to others to leave the farms. There was a group of people, several thousand, probably about 3,000 or 4,000 people for supporting the farming community, white and black, who showed up and had speeches and took a knee out of respect to pray for the young man's soul and things like that. A small group of people left that after it wrapped up, and they went to the courthouse and pushed their way into the courthouse. The police overreacted, drove armored vehicles called Nyalas into the courthouse, knocking the wall down. Then the crowd pushed the vehicle back. A police truck drove up and was threatening the crowd, was driving into a crowd of civilians. So people tipped it over and then walked away. Because it was engine, it was running, it caught fire. So the media and the government portrayed this as an out of control. They focused on a mob and called it riots and talked about apartheid, which had nothing to do with this, and basically attacked white South Africans. So it sounds like the government in Nigeria is doing a similar situation, which they're focusing on a group that was not really part of the main activity here, and the one that caused it, because it's the most sensationalist. Is the press also doing that? Because I haven't watched any Nigerian television this week.
No, I think the press has been controlled more by fear of clapback from the government, and also their need to do their job. That has really guided the coverage. So what you find is some media platforms have become synonymous with actual coverage, and for that you find like Arise News was given so much applaud for how it covered has been covering the protest so far, particularly October 20th, that very fatal shooting. They were the only one and the first to actually put it on TV that soldiers have opened fire at protesters in Lekki. Very brazen. They were unapologetic about that, right? But other media outlets, because they have private interest. For instance, the media house that was burnt down in Lagos is called TVC. That's TV Continental. It's owned by one of the biggest power brokers in Nigeria, called Bola Ahmed Tinubu, from Lagos State. That TV station was attacked not because of their poor coverage, but because they believe the ownership of that TV station is complicit, because he is like the big boss of Lagos, right? And then the sitting governor who is supposed to be responsible for Lagosians is a puppet of this particular political power broker. So you could find that the attack on media, some media platform that maybe some of our viewers might have heard, that the media house was attacked. No, that's not just protesters attacking any random media house or using that as a way to protest their discontent with the coverage. No, it's actually a way to attack the political power structures in the state by attacking the property that they own and they control. Because you can't tell me that in a state where there's a sitting governor, soldiers would march on to deploy to a particular spot. Prior to that, they had removed cameras, and they say laser cameras. They turn off the lights before the soldiers got there, and then open fire. So somebody must have given the orders. The army initially said there were no soldiers on ground in Lekki, which was definitely not true, because the shooting was actually streamed live, right? So when they discovered that the shooting was streamed live, they started backtracking. Then the governor said, that he did not give the order for the soldiers to go on to shoot people at Lekki.
Wow.
Just day before yesterday, now the army is now saying that it is the governor of Lagos that gave them the authority to go ahead to do what they did. But this is Nigeria, where we are in a federal republic. It is only the federal government that can actually give a directive to the army. I'm sure pretty much in many societies that are federation, even our police is even a federal police. We don't have state police in Nigeria like you have in the US. So we know that the governor does not have the political clout or the backbone to give any of this instruction without his godfather, right, who owned the TV station that was attacked, or coming from above, which is the presidency. So it all depends on how you want to look at it. But the Nigerians really don't care. What they want is justice, not just peace and saying everybody go back to your homes, don't protest, we're disrupting the economy and all of that. Because they're coming up with numbers like Lagos lost 250 million naira in a few days. Nigeria has lost 700 billion. All that is nonsense. Real lives were lost that would never come back, and these people were failed by their police. They were failed by their security agencies, including the army. They were failed by their political representative in government. So to try to minimize what has happened, that it's ridiculous, because there's a social contract. We have given up agency to these outfits, these institutions, to actually provide security. To watch them abuse that agency and to watch them exploit and extort the people is just unacceptable in a democracy. It is. So what we're looking at now is building the momentum, capitalizing on the momentum that has been built from this protest and taking that towards 2023, where we'll have an election, because that is the only way. This is a democracy. If they cannot allow us to protest, to make changes, then we're better prepared to make changes via the ballot.
Well, there's a few points to bring out here. Number one, the chat rate is very low, even though we have 80 people watching right now, which means they're very interested in what you have to say. So thanks, folks, for that. Feel free to add questions in there. I've seen some of them. Let me get a couple comments here now. First off, the one who is a Nigerian and living in Nigeria gave the figure 78. But again, it doesn't matter. One life taken by this nonsense is too many. So as I said, that's why I asked the question, because it's been various reported different levels. The most reliable figure I found is as 12, but it really doesn't matter. The fact that the police, the special anti-robbery squad behaves in this fashion, that's the issue here. And it's sad that lives are lost. The second is that what's the question here? Oh, the one said the media is trying to censor the massacre in Nigerian farm murders. I think that the media, and don't answer this right away because I want to get to a couple more comments, but we'll come back to it. I think the media is kind of caught in a difficult spot. Either they're seen as complicit with the government because they self-censor, because if they don't self-censor, they fear the wrath of the government cracking down on them. And then the media that don't report are attacked because they self-censored. And so they're getting attacked from one side, from the government. And then you have those who are brave enough to actually report it. And it looks like, fortunately, Arise is doing okay. They haven't been shut down, but they're the only ones out there. So I'm not defending the media because, there's Nigerian media is all over the place. There's good and there's bad. But I think that they do find themselves in a no-win situation. But ultimately, at the end of the day, their job is to report the news. So they should just do it and suffer the consequences. So I won't give them a free pass. But George Best in the UK says, we have the flying squad, because we're talking earlier about special types of police. We have the flying squad with the civil police and SBS and SAS militarily. I'm sure you're aware of those. Majority of police are not armed. That's true. Most police in the UK, just like in Botswana, don't carry sidearms. Only these special units do. And that's because of the nature of law enforcement. And that works for the UK and it works for Botswana. But obviously in Nigeria, this isn't working very well. So very quickly, you talk about 2023. Internationally, at least, President Buhari has had a decent reputation, generally speaking. And people, at least outside the country, tend to think that Nigeria is relatively stable and not many problems and that he's popular inside the country. But I've seen a lot of blowback against Buhari these past 2 weeks. What's the situation? Is this blowing back on Buhari, and will that affect his candidacy in 2023 or his party? What's happening?
Yeah, so first of all, let me go back to what you said about media censorship. Do you know that these Arise News channels and all the other media platforms that really paid attention to the protests, they are actually being fined by our National Broadcasting Corporation for using social media videos.
So they are being fined. So the government has
already.
So the government has attacked them. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
That has happened even as we speak. And
so what I recommend to people is we go flood Arise. Go find their web presence and patronize their site, even if you just play it in the background to get them some revenue, get them some attention so they can stand up and fight against the government. Go ahead.
Yeah. Even yesterday, the Minister of Information is even now saying that Nigeria we should censor and control social media. Now, that is as an attack. It's an unintended consequence of we standing up. So because they understand that the youths have at least demonstrated capacity to organize themselves politically for political action via social media, now there's an incentive for the ruling establishment to now go ahead and say, okay, you know what, since this is where they know how to organize themselves, let's just squash it, because these guys are not ready to live. The median age of Nigeria is 18 years. Mm-hmm. So to think that our leaders will have leaders in their 70s, some of them even clocking 80, still trying to wrestle for political power in a country where the median age is 18 is ridiculous, because there's huge generational gaps that cannot be understood. They cannot understand certain issues that are particularly, nuanced and best suffered by, or there are certain population segment that is suffering. Nigerians are so young to have leaders that are that old. Nigerians are so vibrant to have leaders that are so lethargic and not, so there's so much inertia. Mind you, before President Buhari addressed the country, for days and days and days, Nigerians have been asking for the president to actually address the issue. Every single time something happens, you always find, there's always a slow response. Why? Because he feels because it's like you say in the US, lame duck here. This is his last term in office. Yep. He doesn't feel like he has anything to prove to Nigerians, because his reputation in this country is set in the sense that people are disappointed, that he came on a platform as a reform Democrat. When Buhari was running for office, my father and even I wanted Buhari to win, because of when he was a military ruler, he was known for two things: anti-corruption and national discipline. Like the national morale was really, really high. He wanted a country where youths, young people, old people behave decently in public. He was so hard on that, because he felt like if you do not guide the population when they are young, so for instance, in Buhari's time, even in front of in a bank or not bank, really like market or whatever, or in front of bus stations, you can't jump queue. You will be beaten right there on the spot, right? So there was this war against indiscipline. You know, that was something he was popular for back in the 80s. So, and then corruption also was very, very low. So when he was coming back, there was for his first term, there was so much, anticipation, so much expectation, because we know corruption and indiscipline is still a major, in fact, it's even worse than it was at that time. But he came back, what we saw was just a shift towards statism. What we saw was a shift, from what he used to represent. It was more of like a lip service, because I'm sure he had to grease so many palms and bribe so many people to get their support, to win. Being a military person, not necessarily a career politician, he just needed those people. And I'm not trying to make an excuse for him, but Buhari has been a disappointment on almost every front that you can imagine. So when we talk about his international reputation, yes, what he sold to the world was he is a reformed Democrat, right? And that was the tag that was pushed in the US. That was the tag that was pushed in the UK when he visited those places, prior to the election. But what we are seeing today, is this how in a democracy, is this how the military is supposed to behave? Is this how the police is supposed to behave? No, it's not. So when we look at the reputation, yes, maybe the international community has given some form of condemnation. So we've got Hillary Clinton said something about Buhari behaving, or at least not, the police and the army treating Nigerians better. We heard some words from even the US delegation here actually visited the vice president. So we've got both individual politicians in the US and even government also, like US delegation visiting delegation from the embassy here visiting the vice president. Then the UK government issued statement. We've got statement from Germany and so on and so forth, right? But what I know is that Buhari is promising stability, at least just enough stability. See, the argument now is Nigeria and so many African countries are so restive, or they can only be held together by force. And if you want to have a country that is stable enough for all your companies, you have to support me. You can't go against me. And I think that's the deal with many African leaders right now, because it's no longer a case of democracy or democratic practices or rule of law and all of that. No. Now I think the bar is now very low for these Western countries. They're just like, what, you do whatever you want to do, but just give us at least enough stability. Because I don't see any reason why, if there's with evidence of shooting on the streets, there's been no talk about the UN Security Council gathering to say, let's look at a proper investigation from the ICC, right? Nothing of that. Before 2020, there was a protest against Shia. Shiites were protesting. 2018, they were on the streets. Scores of Shiites were killed. You don't have to be Muslim to realize that is heinous. It's not, human life is human life. It doesn't matter. If people are unarmed and they're protesting, whether they are Hindu, Christian, Muslim, it doesn't matter. The army has no right to kill citizens. Even if maybe they threw a few stones, but stone versus and then you retaliating with guns, gunshot, heavy fire. It's a mismatch. Of what happened to water cannons, what happened to just using sticks. But this happened inside Buhari's administration. But he faced no. Yes, they might pay lip service, but there was no real condemnation for it. So it's not, this is even less than what happened to the Shiites in the streets of Abuja just in a couple of years back. So I think there's, like I always tell people, when it comes to international community response, it's always going to be lip service, and the Nigerian government is going to tell them, what, if we don't do this, there will be no Nigeria for you to actually have all of this, your trade and stuff with. So I think it's almost like the bar is very, very low these days.
Well, let me do a little bit of housekeeping very quickly. Hey, folks, you're listening to Chris Wyatt Africa on the Indaba Africa channel. This is a special feature live stream. Today, Thursday, the 29th of October, 2020. My special feature guest is a colleague of mine from Nigeria, Ovigwe Eguegu, who is a national security analyst and specialist there in Nigeria. He was on the channel previously a few months back. We talked about the Lake Chad Basin and the farmers-herders conflict and Boko Haram and a bunch of other issues when it came to Nigeria. Today, we're talking specifically about events that have been unfolding over the past few weeks in Nigeria related to the Special Anti-Robbery Squad and its abuses and that sort of thing. So let me get to a little bit of a couple questions here that people had and comments. Carminda Brendel asked a little bit ago whether there's no lockdown in Nigeria. There was lockdown, but I think that's pretty much gone now. Isn't that the case?
Yeah, that's gone. I think from about early this month, lockdowns have. Like 2 months ago, yeah. So lockdowns were replaced with curfew about 2 to 3 months ago. Yeah. But from October, even the curfews have just vanished.
Now, Sylvester Celine asked a question. He says, simple question, and it's not as simple as he thinks it is, but if the election goes against the current administration, will they give up power peacefully? Well, I think Buhari would have given up power, but we'll see. Nigeria has a difficult history when it comes to this, but let's very quickly talk about Buhari. He's about 3,000 years old. 77. So he's nearly an octogenarian. He's been the president previously. He was a two-star general, major general, retired from the Nigerian military. He's a graduate of the U.S. Army War College, but he is. He was one of two. What's that? And Sandhurst, yes, but that was as a cadet. I'm talking about he was a senior officer, but a graduate of the U.S. Army War College. But he was a graduate of the U.S. Army War College in 1980. I was in the Army 36 and a half years, and that was 3 years before I even came in the Army. So it's been a while ago. But he's one of two serving heads of state when Sisi was the head in France, and Buhari, two Army War College graduates as heads of state around the world. But he's been around for a while, and as you mentioned, he had a reputation for discipline back in the 80s. And that's why, Ovigwe, that's why I asked the question, because internationally, the view looking into Nigeria is that Buhari has been a successful president. Things have gone well, but obviously there's some issues here with law enforcement and its abuse and that sort of thing. So Sylvester Celine asked a question: is this corruption in the police and army only within certain factions like the Special Task Force, or is it present throughout the system? Before you answer, because you have a very direct view on it, I've worked with the Nigerian military, not the police, extensively in West Africa, and also dealt with some of their officers back here, been my students at the War College. My experience has been that this is episodic. It's not, I wouldn't say it's systemic. I wouldn't say it's the entire military. I've seen very professional Nigerian soldiers and units, but it is more pervasive than it should be. And what's your response to that about the police and the military?
No, see, the thing is, the culture of policing in Nigeria has constantly been deteriorating. Even from when I was much younger, it wasn't this bad. And yes, there is, let's start with the policing. Then the police themselves, they have been a victim of bad governance and misrule. Do you know Nigerian police officers actually have to spend their own money to buy their uniforms? Yes. This is live. Anybody can just call any journalist in Nigeria and ask about this, and that is ridiculous. Because
I would agree, but in the interest of full disclosure, as an officer in the U.S. military, I have to buy my own uniforms too. Enlisted don't, but officers do.
No. When you have to buy your own uniform from your own pocket or from your salary, you pay for your own uniform and gears and everything. Right?
That's correct. I have to buy it out of my own pocket. Now I don't have to buy any kit. I mean, if I have a sidearm, that all comes from the government. But uniforms, I have to buy my own. Of course. Yeah, I have to buy my own.
Okay.
But I don't think the police should be buying uniforms, especially when they're not properly paid. And the same with
exactly
the military.
Exactly. Now I was going to come to that to not tell you how poor the pay is and how things are really bad when it comes to standard of living. If you Google Nigerian police barracks and you see the kind of conditions they live in and their wives live in and their children live in, you would know they are as much a victim of bad governance like any other Nigerian. But one of the things that they are doing wrong is that they are putting that frustration on Nigeria. So some of the extortion is a combination of criminality and their own desperation, right? So these are poor, largely very poor people by any measure, but it doesn't excuse the fact that they now have to resort to extorting Nigerians to cover up for, whatever shortage in cash that they have. Why don't they raise it up with the government? They should be able to do that. They are citizens too, as much as they are in service. But they are just picking on, those who they can actually deal with. We're not supposed to be subsidizing. We're already paying them. Please, let's understand, it's our taxes and revenue from oil and all of our, natural resources that's already paying them salaries. And if they know that the government is disproportionately, so politicians are disproportionately grabbing majority of far more than their fair share, then they should actually raise up the matter, So, but in terms of the culture, so there is that economic angle to it, but there's a general, policing culture that I think has not left this country since the era of, colonial era. So the colonial era, and this is not me trying to throw blows at, Britain and all of that. No. The fact is the fact. Our police and our army are by measure really occupying forces. It's not a polite thing to say, but it just has to be said, because these institutions were built before this country. Nigerian police was older than Nigeria itself, because the heritage and all of that, and that attitude of policing has not gone. That attitude of maintaining security has never ever left them. So when we're talking about police reforms, there are 5 demands that they have been put up by the protesters, and one of them is actually police reform, because we know that some of these people are not approaching policing even the way it is being done in the UK or in the US or in many other countries. It is, even by African standard, it is worse. Yeah. I'm telling you, but by so-called African standard, I don't think there are yes, you can find some very weird folks in the Congo, in the DRC, just doing so. But you need to see the shock on the faces of many Ghanaians, many Sierra Leoneans, or many South Africans, even South Africans. They were shocked online to see some of the things that were coming out of Nigeria, where you can just shoot somebody, like that for no reason. So the standard of policing is really, really poor. Yes, the SARS unit epitomizes it, right? And I would be lying to say SARS is a perfect representation of the entire police structure. No, SARS is not a representation at all. SARS is an extreme. It's an extreme, and it's not the norm, right? It's an extreme, but SARS, mind you, are cut from the same police institution. They're not different, they're not a different force. It's just that they are from the same institutions. That tells you that there's something wrong with the institution. So whether they were banded up together for their their psyche or their approach and trigger happy nature, that's a different thing. But the fact that they are from Nigerian police force itself tells you the police institution itself has a problem. Now with the army, I think the army is better than the police in the sense that you would find more citizen abuse with SARS than even with Nigerian army, right? Now, that's not to say that there are no issues of heavy-handedness, or crimes and all of that. That is still there, but largely the army is disproportionately more disciplined, as they should be, than the police. So, but that's not to say they've not had their own reputational stain and their own misgivings, because like I was telling you now, all that has happened, the shooting has been done by the army. 2020 shooting, the one we saw against the Shiites, also by the army. The OD massacre of 1999, if you probably remember, in Bayelsa State, by the army. The Zaire massacre in 2015 by the army. So the army is brought in and used as last resort when they really need to instill fear, and they just go on to do and undo. And it's not that they do this every day, but that's when I would say it's not really the army's practice, but directive coming. Because if the army is acting outside of authority, that political authority, you will see people persecuted for this.
Well, so let me put things a little bit perspective real quick, because I know people are asking this question. So let me I just was quickly, while you're doing that, listening to you, assembling. So the salary for a police constable grade level 3, I can't go with recruit because they're in training, so that doesn't really count.
Yeah.
But in Nigeria, the set salary for a police constable grade level 3, which is at the bottom, is $113 per month. That's
just think about that.
$3.73 per day for 365 days. The international standard for the poverty line is $2.60 for a person. Now, that takes into account people in developing countries, and Nigeria is arguably a developed country in many aspects. We can make that statement, I think, particularly in the metropolitan areas. So $3.73 a day. By comparison, just to give one example, and obviously cost of living and what you can purchase for that are very different, but in the United States, the starting salary for an average police officer is $4,455 per month or $54,460 per year. Wow. It's just over $1,000 for the same sort of police officer in Nigeria. The London Metro Police, the starting salary for the low end of the wage scale is $50,044. So there's close to parity between the United States and the London Metro for a starting police officer. And no wonder that, now here's the thing, and this is something I've always said, Ovigwe, always, it's driven me nuts. When I was in Liberia, the starting salary for a Liberian National Police Officer, LNP, was $63 US a month. So that's less than half, that's about half what the Nigerian police are getting now. And that was before taxes. They actually had the audacity to take taxes out of their salary. So they've actually made about $57 a month. So less than half what a Nigerian is making now. And whoops. The connection's breaking up there. This connection's breaking up. Are you back? That's still choppy. So let me finish that line of thought while hopefully the signal comes back a little bit better. So my point with all this, folks, is that if you want to end corruption, you must pay law enforcement and government officials a living wage. There is a fixed cost to doing business, whether it's providing security or it is providing services to citizens in your country. You must pay people a living wage. Now, you shouldn't make them wealthy. I mean, if they want to save and invest with their extra money, that's their business. But government is not a place to get wealthy. It's a place to provide a service. But to provide that service, one must pay a living wage. Otherwise, how can you expect the police to be anything but corrupt when they can't even feed themselves? Are you still there, Ovigwe? Oh, your connection's bad. If you can hear me, Ovigwe, why don't you do this? Drop your call and then call back in on the same link. Try that, because your data is really frozen up there. We're not getting you coming in at all. So, all right. So I don't know if you can hear me. Anyway, folks, you're listening to Special Feature live stream on this Thursday. Okay, whoa! Now I'm divided into two. All right, he's going to come back. There you go.
Yeah. Sorry.
There he is.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't see your camera, but you're coming back. I take it you left the car.
No, yeah, I actually did because my modem, Wi-Fi modem is dying, so I'm looking for a place to plug it.
Oh, okay. Oh, he's got a mobile Wi-Fi. Okay.
Yeah.
You aren't in the loo at a petrol station, are you?
No. Yeah. Anything for you, Colonel.
Yeah, no, it's pretty sad, George, that people have to buy the police officers have to buy their uniform. But yeah, military officers in the U.S. anyway. I'm not sure about other militaries. They have to buy their own uniforms, which, folks, can be quite expensive. My mess blues cost about $1,500 to put everything on it. The metal ribbon board alone, if I did it properly, cost me about $500 to make those for all those decorations that I have. So yeah, it's quite pricey. The fatigues, a set of fatigues cost well over $100. And if you're in a tactical unit, they wear out pretty quickly if you go to combat. By the way, if your uniforms get destroyed in combat, the government doesn't replace them. If you damage or if you're wounded, that comes out of your pocket. So think about that next time you see American soldiers in Afghanistan, they get wounded. That uniform that they're wearing, they bought that. That wasn't provided by the government. And with some rare exceptions, there are certain times that they do get them. But we're just waiting for Ovigwe to get back. I got his voice. I think he's probably gussing up the place he's at, so it looks better. Carminda is concerned about the sudden arrival of ISIS in Mozambique. Well, Carminda, I'll have to break the news to you. It's not a sudden arrival. This activity has been taking place in Cabo Delgado province for a number of years. I was warning the Africa Command, U.S. Africa Command, when I was the division chief for Southern Africa back in 2011 to 2013, that this was a real possibility that we could have an insurgency breaking out in Cabo Delgado province because of the influence of external forces. And the world wasn't interested in 2011 to 2013. Well, now the world is paying attention. But ISIS inspired, but it's not ISIS. It's an ISIS allegiance. And it's being incorrectly portrayed in the media, in my view. Now, we've done a special feature on that and had guests on the program talking about Mozambique and what is happening in Cabo Delgado province not all that long ago. So you can go back and check that on my past live streams. And if you want to watch that, and I've also talked about it quite a bit on the channel. But if I were South African, I'd be worried a lot less about what's happening in Cabo Delgado province and a lot more about what's happening with the ANC and the EFF. Those are the big concerns. So, Ovigwe, have you gone, or did you just put your mic on mute? Let me see if he's put his mic on mute, folks. So he's trying to get set up. So we'll get him back here in just a moment, hopefully, and let's see what's going on.
Do video because I'm trying to connect. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. I can hear you. If you can't do video, that's fine. I'll just put a photograph of you up, but just let me know.
Yeah. Let's continue with audio, please.
Okay, so we're going to continue with audio, ladies and gentlemen. And while Ovigwe gets back to the conversation, I'm going to take that off the screen and I'll put his photograph up so you guys can see his dead sexy profile picture. So we're going to put that up there. so ladies, if you're looking for, we'll get you his digits if you're looking for it. Okay. Okay, so Ovigwe, where were you at when we got cut off? I'm trying to remember what we were talking about, or if you just
we're comparing, policing culture, with the security culture, where with the police institution and with the army. And I was telling you that the army definitely is more disciplined as they should be, but they are still not spared from the accusation and that mentality, of just going on taking lives of people they're supposed to be protecting. And I was trying to make a point that I don't necessarily pin the blame on the army, because I don't think the army would go onto the street to shoot if they don't have the political authority or the political backing to do that. Because if they did, then in every instance they've done that, people would have been court-martialed, people would have been fired or sent to prison. But we don't see that. And that's because the order is coming from the political ranks, not necessarily, the army itself. Because if you look at any country and then the army carries out such an act, it cannot be forgiven by the political class if it doesn't carry, because it carries serious punishment.
No, I think those are fair points. But this is a bit disconcerting. There were a few other questions about Nigeria in general. Let me just get back to those very quickly. So there was one here about. I'm sorry, I'm trying to find this very quickly here. Yeah, basically, someone was asking a question earlier. Oh, that's what it was. Here it is. It's Ginaldo Rose who asked this question a while ago when we first got started. He said, so what's the cause that's led to civil demise in Nigeria? I think you've answered that question, but his question is much broader than that, civil demise. I don't know that's an apropos question that we could be using here, because Nigeria is a very complicated country with a lot of successes and a lot of challenges. So I don't think we can really just talk about civil demise, but I don't think that Nigeria is in demise. I think that what we're seeing right now is a buildup of several years of anger over abusive behavior by this special police unit and also parts of the military. And I think that's what's playing out right now. Am I getting that wrong, or is Nigeria in a downward spiral?
Well, the way I like to see it is this. We have a youth bulge, right, in terms of demographics, and there is no increase in jobs like manufacturing jobs and all of that. The unemployment is currently at 25% or thereabout, and underemployment about 27%. So we're looking at about 55 or 54% of anguish, to put it in a sense. So people are getting frustrated. People are getting agitated because of the economic situation of the country. Yes, things might look better for certain industries, right? Maybe the entertainment industry is doing very well, which is actually, the biggest employer of labor in the country. You can imagine that, Then there is some other retail, maybe not, because even South Africa's ShopRite is even divesting, from Nigeria, The natural resource sector are just being captured by a small class of ruling elites, not a huge employer like it used to be. The agricultural sector seems to be the only sector where anybody can just venture into. But then again, the issue of skill, the issue of training, and all of that is not necessarily allowing people to actually, to move upwards, or I can say upward mobility is gone. Like for many people, there is almost no chance, when they look at how they can better themselves, millions and millions of kids out of school. I think we have about 11 million children out of school, in Nigeria. So when you look at the stats, you will not be wrong to phrase the question, like that. But in terms of general civility, I think it's pretty much the same, right? Not if we're looking at civil behavior of the population itself, right? If that's what we're talking as civility. But if you're saying civil unrest as in agitation, of course things are boiling under the surface, and is driven by the poor economics, not necessarily any ethnic tension, not necessarily any religious tension. That is just very little with Boko Haram. It's more about the economic situation that is getting worse and worse and even for me, that is actually the explanation, that seems to resonate with many parts of the continent. So it's just that people look at themselves and they don't see a better future for, if you are 18 years old, like I said, the median age is 18, so many people are around 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 23. They just cannot see a better future for themselves, and that is not very good. And they look at the political class, they are so corrupt. All they do is, find ways to siphon more and more and more of natural resources. And then when they want to do one or two projects, they go for loans, right? So if you look at the amount of money we're getting from loans, and you begin to ask yourself a question, so if we're not able to get loans from the IMF or from China, are you telling me that from our oil wealth, we cannot get things done in this country? Are you telling me that from taxes, we can't get in? Well, we can't get enough from taxes because the government is not actually creating an enabling environment for businesses to thrive enough to pay good enough taxes, So it's a bit of, a quagmire we find ourselves here. So the civil unrest or the civility in that sense, it's really getting worse because of the economic situation.
Well, actually, let's tease that out a little bit. Nigeria is Africa's largest economy. After the rebasing, finally, it took them years to do it. The rebasing, and now with the complete collapse of South Africa's economy, which contracted 51% in the second quarter. Unbelievable, the contraction because of the government's lockdown, and already it was teetering on the edge. But Nigeria is now even so much larger compared with South Africa, which was second largest after rebasing. But Nigeria's economy is large. It's diverse in some respects, but it remains overly dependent on extraction, particularly of petroleum. This year, I reported on this earlier this year, the expectation was that the revenue from oil would drop by at least $34 billion this year. And I think they got like $3 or $4 billion from the IMF. I'm like, how is that going to cover shortfalls when the economy loses $34 billion? And that was an optimistic outlook early in the year. And we've seen that demand for petroleum is still depressed. And of course, one of Nigeria's biggest consumers for oil for a long time was, of course, the United States. But we don't buy oil from Nigeria anymore. We don't need it. And so it has gone other places. The Chinese have picked up some of the slack. But with global demand for petroleum down, and Nigeria still, decades later, overly dependent on oil, despite the fact you've got a diverse agricultural sector with palm oil and many other things, it's really a problem. In addition to that, we have to point out that since the 1960s, Nigeria, even in inflation-adjusted dollars, has made over $1 trillion at least from the sale of oil, and that's the revenue the government's made. Where is that money at? You have to wonder. It's got to be frustrating for people who are trying to do business in Nigeria, some of the challenges they're put in front of them. Are you there? Uh-oh. Is somebody somebody breaking in? I hear tin. Are they ripping the roof off?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, it's really frustrating. And what I think the country needs to do is to really sit down and look for how to tap into the youth budget I'm talking about. Because if we're going to create any society that's better than what we have today, we have to find employment for the young working people. We're not talking about social security for older generation that have been ripped off by decades of misrule. I'm talking of even the young generation, because without that, development is no longer a question of trying to be better in the world. It's not getting the economic growth and development for us now. It's almost like a security issue, because without it, the security situation is going to get dire, and that's not in the direction that I think, we should work towards.
No, I think it's a great point, but interesting you mentioned that the youth bulge is definitely a concern across the continent. Nigeria has a problem. But while you've mentioned that Nigeria's median age is 18, which is very young, it's not quite as grave as the situation in, say, Niger or Uganda. In Uganda, the median age is about 14 and 3 months at this point. Can you imagine that the majority of the population is under the age of 15? That's just insane. It's crazy. Now, median's there,
Yeah.
but the 60% of the population is under the age of 18 and over 50% is under the age of 15. That is astounding. Where are those jobs for those 20 million people going to come from in that economy? That's a scary thought. Nigeria has a similar situation, but I guess it's in many respects, perhaps it's worse than Uganda's situation because we're talking about 38 million people in Uganda. We're talking about 208 million people in Nigeria. And at current growth rates, Nigeria will be population-wise larger than the United States in the year 2050. That's a lot of jobs that got to be created.
And it's not, and it doesn't seem like we even have the political class to actually put the thinking in place and create the enabling environment, because definitely the government cannot employ those people. It has to be the private sector, right?
Yep.
But what are we doing in terms of private sector investment, creating an enabling environment for manufacturing jobs? And we're not doing any of that. So it's really, and we're also not looking at how can we even slow down the fertility rate or the birth rate, because if you cannot create the jobs, at least reduce the amount of people that will be looking for the jobs. It's not an argument for any form of population control, any of that, but it's sensible to begin to think of ways to actually get yourself in a better position.
Well, I can help you with that one, Ovigwe, because the simple solution we've discovered over the past 5 decades around the world, starting in Asia, but then also in Africa as well, is that if you want birth rates to decline, the number one solution to this is not family planning. That will fly in the face of a lot of people think. It is important, but it's not family planning. It's actually educating girls. We see massive drop-off in birth rates when all girls get through primary school, which is only 6 years of education. And for those who get through secondary school, high school, it drops additionally. Now, it's not as great a drop when you get through secondary school. So the key thing is to get every girl education through grade 6 so they become literate. And when girls are literate, they begin to think for themselves and they understand that they have certain, rights and privileges and that they have a place in society. And so the key to reduce population growth, job number one, is to get all girls a proper education, a functional education through at least primary school. And not, we all know that not all kids in Nigeria are getting that education. That's part of the problem.
Yeah, with over 10 million kids out of school. I think I saw a report recently that pointed at 0.6% of all of Africa, women are actually literate, 0.6%, something like that. Maybe you can even Google that up. I was shocked. I think I have the article saved up and I want to actually read it. 0.6%, I'm sure of that. But I don't know if we're looking at just sub-Saharan Africa or including not Africa. It's ridiculous. The literacy rate is really, really bad in many, many countries. And I think it's an indictment on the international development industry, right? That decades after, yes, we're not blaming them. We're not expecting all them to do the educating for us, because many countries are able to do that for themselves, especially those Asian countries. But decades and decades and decades of, programs and development programs, it seems as if, we have never, what we have is just a drop in the bucket in terms of, progress that have been made. The failure primarily is of governance. We have to accept that responsibility, But too many people just want to, blame, colonialism and blame all. It's easy to blame, right? Than to actually take responsibility, because you cannot blame corruption of government today on the British or on the French, no matter how heinous their legacy is in the continent.
Absolutely. Well, listen, it's been great having you on. But before we go here, I'm going to wrap up because we don't have the video, and that's a little. While your voice is tantalizing, it's a little less compelling for the audience when it's just audio. But
I'm so sorry.
No, that's quite all right. We've covered the topic, but I did want to ask this question, point this out. So earlier you sent me a note and said, "Hey, listen, can we just do audio because I'm in a queue for petrol?" So let me get this straight. You were in a queue for petrol in one of the world's largest oil-producing countries. You had to wait in line because there wasn't enough refined petroleum delivered at the station. Did I get that right?
Very correct.
So, all the irony, ladies and gentlemen, all the irony. One of the most wealthy in terms of endowed riches of petroleum, but that's a whole other story. We'll talk about that on a future stream with Ovigwe about the economy in Nigeria. But let me, folks, we've been talking today with Ovigwe Eguegu, who's a national security analyst and specialist in Nigeria, and we've been talking about events that have unfolded over the past couple weeks in which at least a dozen people were shot dead by the military or law enforcement, all as a response to people being upset about the behavior and conduct of the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, or SARS. No, that's not sudden acute respiratory syndrome. It's a very different acronym in Nigeria. And so, Ovigwe, before I head off, let me get you back on here one last time and see if you've got any final thoughts or comments you'd like to add about the topic we've been discussing today.
Yeah. So, again, thanks for having me on the show. I think the most important thing going forward is that the government needs to listen to legitimate, demands, and these demands have been put forward. There are 5. It stretches from actually even increase police salary. You can imagine that we're actually fighting for the same police we're protesting against. That's the 5th of the 5 demands. To actual, justice for the family, an independent body to investigate, all the accusations that have been piling up years and years on. So all of that needs to factor into how we can get real peace. Because what we're seeing from the government is they're saying, "Oh, get off the street. We want peace. We want calm." But you cannot. You see, peace is not peace that says keep quiet, or keeping quiet in face of injustice is not peace. There must be accountability for people to feel, yes, justice has been served. Then you don't have to tell them to just stay calm and be quiet. The restiveness will only end when people see peace.
All right. Well, that's I agree. Absolutely. That's interesting point there. So we'll get you back on the channel sometime again soon, talk more about these issues. But I want to thank my special feature guest today, Ovigwe Eguegu, once again for being on the channel with me. And I hope that you got a full tank of petrol so you don't have to hang around looking for it again.
Thank you so much.
All right. Yeah. Well, I'm going to let you step out and excuse yourself. I'll give you a shout here a little bit, but I'm going to close out the stream now. Okay?
Sure. Yeah. Bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Ovigwe Eguegu. I want to thank him for being on. There we go. I've got to take that off. Okay, I'm on the screen still. Let me just sort out a few things here. And okay, there you go. So just get him off the screen. I've got to fix a few things here, folks. Give me a second there. And he's off the screen. And he's off the screen. There you go. All right, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks a lot for listening to the stream today. This was my special feature interview with Ovigwe Eguegu, talking about the recent events in Nigeria that unfolded, in which 12 protesters were shot dead. This all stemmed from an incident in which a young man was shot 4 times by the Special Anti-Robbery Squad in Nigeria. And as Ovigwe talked about, this is not a new subject. It's not a new issue. It's been going on for at least 5 years, and it's been building up to a crescendo. And we've seen what's unfold here in Nigeria, a country that has a lot of challenges, but a great deal of potential. Hendo, just a moment ago, before I close out, said that BS about what I said about birth rates, but I will give you an example of 2 countries. The first one is Turkey, which you pointed out there, Hendo, and the first one is the birth rate for women in Turkey in 2017. Barely at replacement level. 2.08 is the birth rate in Turkey. So where women have been highly educated in Muslim and Arabic countries, Turkey's not an Arabic country, but it is a Muslim country, you see that the women educated, you see the birth rates drop precipitously. 2.08 is barely replacement level for childbirth. The second one there is Tunisia, which also has a high level of education among Tunisian women. You can see that's also barely above replacement rate. So those are just 2 examples. I can pick up others from the Arab and Muslim world and show you that, in fact, where women do have high rates of education, it is greatly dropped. And that's why I mentioned the education has nothing to do with religion. I didn't say that, but it has nothing to do with religion. It has nothing to do with ethnicity or where people come from around the world when it comes to educating girls. The reality is, the facts are, the data proves that if you educate young girls through primary school, regardless of the cultural circumstances, regardless of the religious circumstances, you will see a drop in birth rates. Now, will it drop to replacement level or below that? That's a whole different argument. That's not an argument I'm making. What I'm saying is that when you have a fertility rate that's off the charts in a country like Niger, which had 4 million population when I was born, and today has 24 million. That's insane. It's 6 times as many people in a country with no more resources than it had 50 years ago. So what I'm saying is that we've seen it time and again, starting in Asia back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, and carrying through, of course, into Africa in the 90s and the 2000s. When you give primary school education. Oh, okay. All right. Okay, Hendo. Hendo's saying, okay, so see, folks, when people think everybody's in agreement here all the time, Hendo's my most devoted moderator there, and I wasn't calling him out. I was just pointing out a fact. So it looks like I misunderstood what his point was. But yeah, anyway, so I'm just, you folks know I deal in facts, and so I might have misread what Hendo was putting up there. That's why I went and got the facts. But anyway, what's this? Lomwabo Mahulo says we're not a mineral dependent country. Who's that? Nigeria is not? Well, you're a natural resource dependent, that's for sure. If you're talking about Nigeria or you're talking about South Africa. Anyway, folks, the one clearly does not like Buhari and the police in Nigeria. So that came through very clearly. Thanks for your comments, the one. You know, Turkey isn't like Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. The only country that's considered Arab and treats its women well is Tunisia. Yeah, I would disagree with that. I would say Morocco also falls into that boat. Yeah, I would say that Morocco definitely falls into that boat. Algeria, yes and no. I would say by and large, Algeria, yes, but there's certainly pockets of medieval conduct towards women in Algeria. But Morocco definitely falls in the category with Tunisia's in, and also has better birth rates in a lot of places. All right, cool, folks. Well, thank you so much. Listen, okay, 2 more things coming up today. In about 48 minutes, I will be live on the Conscious Caracal. I don't have that link. Hendo, if somebody can put the Conscious Caracal's link in, not necessarily to the stream with me, but at least to the channel. If you don't know the Conscious Caracal, that's Ernst von Saal. We'll be talking about the U.S. elections and more information coming out today as the Trumpster is on a roll, ladies and gentlemen. Man, rally after rally after rally after rally, and the crowds just get bigger and bigger and bigger. Did you see yesterday the crowd in Arizona? At least 40,000 people gathered for that. Insane the number of people showing up for these Trump rallies. Meanwhile, 6 people, 2 goats, and a bullfrog showed up at a Joe Biden rally when they coaxed him out of his basement like Puxatawny Bill, the famous groundhog here in Pennsylvania, popping up out of his hole in the ground to see if he would win the election or not. Yeah, I'll tell you what, this election season may have gone on just 1 week too long for Joe Biden. He couldn't ride out the fraud to get reelected here. So we'll see what happens, whether Trump wins or not. I will say this, folks, though, is that if you look at the election from 2016, Hillary was comfortably ahead. She had 5-6-point margins in many states. She had like a 4-point margin in Florida, as I recall. And she was going to win Pennsylvania, and she was going to win Michigan by wide margins. And they even said she was going to win Ohio. And she lost Ohio by nearly 9 points. She lost Florida by less than a point. She lost Pennsylvania by less than a point. She lost Michigan. And at this time, the polls actually have either even, certainly within the margin of error, or Trump ahead or Biden barely ahead in all these states. If I were the Democrats, I'd be very nervous right now. Very, very nervous. Because I'm telling you, 5 to 9% of the people who actually vote will not tell pollsters the truth, or will lie when asked about who they're voting for or who they have voted for, because they're afraid of being attacked because of these bigots and zealots, these fascists on the left who run around. Yes, I know. It's someone's going to go factor. Oh, you can't be a fascist on the left. Yes, you can be a fascist on the left. Fascism is not a right-wing political phenomenon, as you will find listed in Wikipedia fraudulently. Fascism is across the political spectrum. It has to do with stamping out individual liberties and rights and trying to have control over people. So the fascists on the left, including Antifa, ironically, the anti-fascists, these people ought to be very nervous that there's going to be a surge for Trump here at the end. The Trumpster is going crazy. If he's on live later on my Night Owl stream, I'll have him on. So me on the Conscious Caracal at 8 p.m. South Africa time, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here in the U.S. Catch me on there. And then you'll catch me at 9:30 Eastern, or no, not Eastern, 9:35 on the Night Owls edition of Stray Voltage, in which if the Trumpster is on, we'll be carrying that live, and you'll be able to watch that here on the channel. And then if not, we'll be covering news and events of the day. That is a members-only chat. So members perks, so anybody can watch it. If you're not a paid member, Chris White Africa, please come and watch it. You can watch the chat, you can watch the stream, listen to my commentary and analysis, but you won't be able to contribute to the chat. That's a perk for members only. So anyway, just for that one. So we do that periodically just as a reward for people who are able to support the channel financially. So thanks a lot for that, folks. And what else have we got here? Tomorrow, Dasha Pruitt, a candidate for Pennsylvania's 5th Congressional District, south of Philadelphia. She'll be on the channel. She's in the last days rushing for her opportunity to win in the election on November 3rd. So we'll have her on the channel. That will be tomorrow. And then Sunday, ladies and gentlemen, former IBO welterweight boxing champion, Chris, fun, Heerden. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Van Heerden. Weighing in at, gosh, I don't know how light you have to be in welterweight, but weighing in at the welterweight class over in this corner, Chris Van Heerden, the former IBO welterweight champion of the world from South Africa, currently living in California. I'm sorry, Chris. You could do better than California. Will be on the channel. That's at noon Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. in South Africa and Botswana, and a special feature live stream Sunday. So there you go, folks. There you go. All right. Thanks for tuning in to Chris White Africa, the Indaba Africa channel. I'm going to drop the stream here now, and I'll be on the Conscious Caracal in about 44 minutes now. And you can catch me there if you want to hear a commentary on the upcoming election on November 3rd, which could shape the history of the entire planet. Think about that, ladies and gentlemen. Could shape the history of the entire planet, and that's a true statement. So that's it, folks. I'm going to close it here, and I'll catch you all shortly. And if you can come back and catch me tonight on the Night Owls edition, please feel free to do so. Look forward to seeing you later on. God bless, and thank you for tuning in. My special thanks to Ovigwe Eguegu for excellent analysis on events taking place and have taken place in Nigeria. It was very helpful. I think people can see a lot of parallels between what's going on in Nigeria and what's going on in South Africa. And boy, that systemic racism in Nigeria is really tough. Boy. Yeah. Those who use the default coffee table analysis to be lazy and blame police conduct on systemic racism are just full of themselves, and they're usually leftists. So I make that cheeky comment to point out that there is no systemic racism there. There may be ethnic discord, but there's not systemic racism in Nigeria. All right, folks, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Catch you a little bit.